The Springboks have just finished off a successful rugby championship campaign. Now we look forward to the November internationals. They will be playing Scotland, England, as well as Wales. 3 matches, 3 opportunities for players to wear the green and gold. And in this video, I'm going to be listing 5 players that I feel have a very good shot of making it into Rassie's November squad, who previously weren't in the squad due to either injury or not yet getting that chance for the Springboks. But jumping straight into it, number 1 on the list, I've got Jordan Hendrick. Now, anyone who's been following club rugby in South Africa, that man has had an absolutely incredible Currie Cup for the Sharks. Of course, used to be at the Lions this season, getting that opportunity for the Durban side. But in his URC so far, we have seen him only play the 1 game, as have all of the South African teams. But in the first match up against Connacht, he got himself 6 points, 3 defenders beaten, and has a really strong ability off the kicking tee. Now, the reason that I think that Hendrick has a decent shot of making it into the Springbok squad is, for one, he was a part of the wider squad for the July internationals. For those 3 matches, Rassie had his initial squad and about 15 other players on standby, Jordan Hendrick being one of them, although alongside him on that list was also Sia Masuku, and I feel like these two at the moment, both playing for the same team, both having relatively similar seasons, so I'm curious to see if Rassie does give either of them that opportunity. But another reason that I think Hendrick has a really good shot is because Sasha Feinberg, Ngome Zulu, his initial injury that they hoped wouldn't be too serious, has become a little bit more so. He won't be playing in the November internationals, which opens up a role at either fly half or fullback. Now, there is another player who will fit that mold, and we will get to him in a short moment because he is also on my list. But Jordan Hendrick, in terms of having that younger player in the Springbok environment, of course, Willie Leroux is not going to be there forever, so perhaps now is the perfect opportunity while Jordan Hendrick is playing fullback to give him that chance in the Springbok squad. But moving on to number 2, it is Arno Snyman. Now, he has had his fair share of injuries, and some people might be halfway through writing a comment saying, hang on, Arno Snyman was a part of the Rugby Championship squad, and that is correct, but unfortunately did then suffer that injury that took him out of the later games. He has signed for Leinster this year in the URC, making the transfer from Munster to another Irish side. He's a fantastic player. His offloading is the best out of, I believe, any forward when it comes to taking that contact and then flicking the ball away. But he has been plagued with those injuries time and time again. The foot injury is the latest one to get him, and I was mentioning about it on a recent live stream. Every country seems to have one player that has a world of potential but just ends up being labelled as that injury-prone guy. For New Zealand, it's Ethan Blackadder. For Australia, it's Tongan Thor Taniela Tupou. For England, how many times have we seen Manu Tuolangi look like he's going to be fantastic, just to end up injuring himself scoring a try? That actually happened, by the way. That is how injury-prone, sadly, that man is. But Arno Snyman, unfortunately, just falls into that same boat. But he should be back in the November internationals, and I think he's a type of player that Rassie Erasmus would consider, maybe rather than a Jansie van Rensburg, who we've seen inside of the Springbok environment for quite some time, but we've never seen him actually get any game time. In fact, he's almost one of the only players who hasn't been given that chance for the Springboks throughout 2024. So I would have Arno Snyman once again in that Springbok squad. But moving on to number 3, and this is another situation that does involve an injury, more specifically a thigh injury. Now at this point, it's almost a little bit of a guess the player. It won't take very long though to work out who this is. He has blonde hair that flows in the wind. He could easily get himself a shampoo sponsor for life after his rugby career. He loves wearing budgie smugglers with that South African flag on them. Have you guessed it yet? It's Faf de Klerk. Number 9 for the Springboks. Or has that role moved on to someone else now that Faf de Klerk has suffered a few injuries? But it does seem like he's going to be returning at the perfect time for the November internationals. So perhaps that is where we see Faf de Klerk reintroduced into the side. Now, Morne van den Berg, he's one of those players at the moment that I believe he's going to be very in and out of the squad. They brought him back in because Grant Williams ended up with the injury, but then we could easily see Faf de Klerk take over that Morne van den Berg role alongside Jaden Hendrick, as well as Kobus Reinhardt. And when you talk about experience, Faf de Klerk in that 9 jersey certainly has plenty of it. Andre Pollard always partnering well with Faf de Klerk. A lot of experience in that 9-10 jersey. It's just that big question of, is that the direction that Rassie wants to take his side for the November internationals? It has been reiterated. The Springboks want 3 from 3, and they don't want anything less. So is there going to be risk in that 9-10 combination, or are we going to see the safety of those experienced men? But Faf de Klerk is my 3rd Springbok that I feel has a really good shot of making it back in for November. Number 4, Damian Willemse. Another man that had himself a pretty severe injury. At first, they didn't think it was that serious, and then he's been away for 4 months. Damaged ligaments in his finger. But for Damian Willemse, even just the fact that we've seen 1 game from him in the URC already showed me enough to know that he is still pretty much at that same level as he was before he got injured. He had 3 defenders beaten, 74 meters carried, and 3 offloads. Now, the offloading, I know that doesn't seem like a very substantial stat, but offloading, you know, anyone who's done it, you know that it uses a little bit of your fingers. So I'd like to think he's 100%, or else I don't know why the Stormers would have sent him out there up against the Ospreys. He would fit the mold to replace someone like a Sasha Feinberg, Ngome Zulu in the current squad. They have already mentioned they are backing Mani Libok, so I assume he will be there for the November internationals. And the thought on everyone's mind, I believe, is where are they going to play Damian Willemse? I think it's 15, but Apelele Fassi has been playing extremely well in that fullback jersey. Willie Leroux, like I mentioned, he is eventually going to be replaced, but it's just more of the question of when do they decide to do so. I believe they'll let him get his 100 caps first, though, so we could even see 3 Willie Leroux performances throughout the November internationals. But I do think Damian Willemse, he is in good enough shape at the moment and rearing to go, trying to get back into that Springbok squad, that perhaps he will be able to in November. But that just leaves us 1 person on this list, ladies and gentlemen. So far, we've had 2 men who play fullback but can also play fly half. We've had a lock, we've had a budgie smuggling wearing halfback, and now we've got a big man in that number 8 jersey, which makes it very difficult because at the moment, they've got Jasper Visser, who is playing phenomenal rugby, and you've got Ulrich Lowe, who can also play that number 8 role. But I think a lot of people were asking to see this man at the start of the Rugby Championship, if not the start of the July internationals. I'm talking about Cameron Honeycomb. Now, he has been a really strong player for a pretty long time at the Vodacom Bulls. Last game that he played up against Edinburgh, got himself 3 clean breaks, 3 defenders beaten, 75 meters carried, 16 tackles, 3 offloads. We're talking about a number 8 here. So to have 75 meters carried in a game, even if it's wide open, is still extremely impressive. And those kind of numbers you don't get to see too often for the big men at the back of the scrum. So I definitely think Cameron Honeycomb, he's one of those players that eventually I think we will see him break into the Springboks side. It's just more of that question of when is he going to get that chance. And with so many talented loose forwards coming out of South Africa at the moment, you know, Ruan Venter, the Chichuka brothers, who have now got themselves citizenship, which will make them eligible to play for the Springboks. There are names upon names that you could mention for that future loose forward trio. So perhaps now's not the time for Cameron Honeycomb, but I do think there will be a time for that man some stage before the next Rugby World Cup. But that is my 5 that I feel have a very good shot of making their way into the Springbok side for November. Do let me know, of course, who you guys think will make it into the Springbok squad. I actually have quite a few honourable mentions, and I was originally going to make this a top 10 list, but I decided to cut it down to 5. But the other men on my list who I think have a really good shot, Andre Esterhuizen, 2 tries for the Sharks just last weekend of the URC. Sia Masuku, great performance for the Sharks, really strong off a kicking tee, perhaps could find himself in the Springboks camp very soon. Juan Horn, really talented player, had a man of the match performance up against Ulster, having 76 meters carried and 8 defenders beaten throughout that game. He got to be in the Springbok environment earlier on in the year, had very limited minutes though, but maybe there's a chance we could see him back in the Springbok side. Jean Klein He has made a lot of tackles throughout the first 2 rounds of the URC, the big Munster man. The only way that he gets in the squad, I believe, is if Snyman does not, or they decide to get rid of someone like a Salman Moura, which I don't really see happening, seeing as they do back him as a future Springbok leader. And then the last man on my list, it is Ravs Maxwane, who did extremely well in that game for the Lions as well, 127 metres carried. Perhaps we could see another new winger burst their way onto the scene in the green and gold very soon. But thank you all very much for tuning in. It's a slightly different concept to what we normally do, so if you did enjoy and you want to see more of these type of videos, be sure to let me know in the comments. Be sure to leave a like as well, and I will see you all for the next one.